So these are the derivative of all 6 trig functions, and you're simply just going to have to memorize them. So the derivative of sine x is cosine of x. The derivative of cosine of x is negative sine x. The derivative of tangent x is secant squared x. The derivative of cotangent x is negative cosecant squared x. The derivative of secant x is secant x times tangent x. And the derivative of cosecant x is negative cosecant x times cotangent x. So we use the chain rule for composite functions. That's when you have a function within a function. So if you look at the example here, it's f of g of x. You can see that the function g of x is inside of f of x. So whenever you see a situation like this, what the chain rule states is that h prime of x is equal to f prime of g of x times g prime of x. Essentially, you want to think about this like peeling an onion, where you take the outer layer and then you leave the inside intact. So you take the derivative of the outer function, which is f of x, and you get the derivative, and you leave the inside intact. Then you multiply it by the derivative of the inner function. So now that we know what the chain rule states, let's look at it in an example problem. Let's say f of x is equal to x squared plus 1 to the fourth. Well, in this case, this power of 4 here is going to be the outer function. So we'd start with using the power rule to find the derivative of it. So the f prime of x would be equal to 4 times x squared plus 1 cubed. So we use the power rule on the outside function, which gives you 4x cubed. But remember that the inner function is g of x, or in this case, x squared plus 1, which leaves us with x squared plus 1 in the middle. Then we're going to multiply that by the derivative of the inner function. So the derivative of the inner function using the power rule is going to be equal to 2x. So that would be your answer. So now here's an example where you're actually going to have to apply the chain rule twice. So let's say g of x is equal to sine x cubed to the fifth. Well, here we actually have two composite functions, because we have x cubed inside of this sine, so sine x cubed, and all of that is being raised to the fifth power. So the very outer function is going to be this power of 5, because you're raising everything by the power of 5. So we'd first apply the power rule. So you'd get 5 times sine x cubed to the fourth. So sine x cubed in this case would be the inner function, and you take the derivative of the outer function, which is the power of 5. Now you're going to have to multiply this by the derivative of the next outer function, which in this case would be sine. The derivative of sine is going to be cosine. So you'd get cosine x cubed, because you're taking the derivative of sine x cubed, and so x cubed would be the inner function in that instance. And lastly, you would multiply it by the derivative of x cubed, which is 3x squared. So that would be your answer.